The following broadcast was produced by the Lighthouse for the Blind in San Francisco as part of our Lighthouse Learning Library.
One of the reasons I'm happy to be here is because Brian and I started working together some time ago when I was working with ATS, and I think one of the reasons Brian thought that I might bring something to this program was part of my background has been a recruiter. I've been a recruiter internally. In other words, that means I've worked for a corporation. I was an HR manager, but part of what I did was recruiting, and that was for an international pharmaceutical company. And I used to travel around the United States with the sales managers, and I would hire their entry-level pharmaceutical sales reps. Everyone wants to be a pharmaceutical sales rep. That was a pretty exciting job. But I also recruited PhD scientists who worked in our labs. I recruited vivarium managers or VPs of the vivarium is where they test animals. I mean, marketing, sales with a wonderful pharmaceutical company. When I lost my vision and could no longer work, I couldn't drive back and forth from where I lived to where I worked in Southern California, I moved here and I went into recruiting on the external side. So I've been on both sides. I've been on the inside recruiting for a company, and then I've been on the outside making my living as a recruiter. And they are kind of different animals because a recruiter on the inside has to fill that job. They're required to fill that job, but it's only for that company. An outside recruiter, a person who's either works for a contingency firm or an executive search firm, they have to go out and get the clients. And so they're not required to fill that job. Believe me, they want to fill that job because that's how they're going to make money. So they might have 10 different clients, and they're generally speaking in the same field. In other words, George, the person on your right, George Matthews and I have worked together. He's an outstanding recruiter in his field. He has worked in such a narrow field. He does recruiting for public relations firms, IT, not only just public relations firms, but IT public relations firm. So that's all he does. He recruits from around the nation, and he works with the other agencies around the nation. He's an executive search. So he will bring not the perspective of, he's not going to be here to be recruiting you. So I have to make that really clear. Their purpose of being here is not to find clients. And George is probably going to talk about that a little bit. But their purpose is to let you know what recruiters, real life recruiters who are making their living, why they choose certain people to pass on to their client companies. We're minus one person on our panel. There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that one of those people that was going to be on the panel was from Google, and he threw his back out this week, and so he just really couldn't make it up this far of a trip. However, the good news is that we're now working with Google. So he is the head of the diversity recruiting team, and we, at the Lighthouse, he's really interested in working with us and what we're doing. So I think that's the good news. Right, so, pardon? And I asked him if he could send another member of his team, and he said, I am the team, so otherwise they'd be here. The other person I want to introduce to you is David Walker, and I've worked with David Walker for absolutely years. He has managed contingent firms. He's done executive recruiting. His primary emphasis has been in the field of accounting, so he places CFOs, he places people in higher management types of positions. And he's very effective at what he does. Both of these individuals have excellent reputations in their field, and they're extremely successful. They've made a lot of money, if that's how you count being successful. But they're more than that. Recruiters have, I think, sometimes a bad name. I think sometimes people think recruiters are just in it for the money. But I want to share just a couple of things with you about these two people. That's not all they're interested in. They're actually human beings. David is a gourmet chef. True gourmet chef. He actually has dinners in his home. I've done this with him, where instead of taking my people that are visiting from out of town to a restaurant, I hire David, and I go to his home, and he pairs the courses what I want to serve. He cooks it, he pairs it with wine, and we sit at in his beautiful Victorian home. And he serves us such a lovely meal. It's so much better than going to a restaurant. If any of you ever want to do this, I can give you his name. But he has outside interests, a human being. He's so warm and such a generous person in everything that he does. George, I just learned he has a new hobby. He's doing Airbnb. Yeah. Airbnb, anyone know it? Yeah. Okay, so he's he's been a host. This year he's made a lot of money hosting people from around the world in his home. Right. And George also loves to travel. He's a swimmer. He loves cats. I mean, there's so many human things about George. These two are two of my favorite people in the whole world. So without further ado, what I'd like them to do is just give you an overview of their perspective of recruiting, and then open up to questions and answers. And since Sean Washington from Google isn't here, I'll sit at the table, but if you wish to address a question to me personally, that's fine, but use your recruiters that are actually here. And so if you want to start, George. Okay.
It's really very special to be here, and I'm very grateful to both Lighthouse and to Kate for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. I've given similar talks in the past, and I think this topic of job hunting and resume writing and what to do, what not to do is more important today than ever before. You know, regardless of your skills, your backgrounds, any kind of visual handicaps or not, it's just tough for everyone. I just want to say a little about myself. My background is that I used to teach writing, creative writing. I loved doing that, but it just didn't pay the bills. And so I became a recruiter kind of by accident. When I came back to San Francisco after graduate school, I signed up with an agency in order to do temporary work. And one day I just looked at the recruiter and I just said, "Can I do what you're doing?" And he said, "Yeah, probably." So, you know, I signed up with an agency at that time that actually had training, because this is like 27 years ago. At that time, what they did with contingency recruiters at agencies is they would just give you a phone and a phone book and just say, you know, call employers and find out if they have any hiring needs and see if they'll work with you. Well, it's gotten more sophisticated since then. And now with the advent of social media, especially social media marketing, it's very, very difficult for recruiters. If I get a job search from a client, more often than not, when I call you to talk about the opportunity, you will say to me, "Oh, is that the Horn Group? Because somebody from their company has called me," or "I have a friend who works there and they sent me a job description." With social media like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, those are kind of the rivals for recruiters today. One thing you should know about recruiters is that our success rate isn't very good. We probably place 3% of the people we see. And that means there's 97% of the people we see we end up doing nothing for in terms of actually placing them at a job. So we have 97% of the people out there who think we're losers, we're failures, we're not successful. And, you know, they're entitled to that feeling. And the problem is, it's not really a problem, it's a reality. Employers want three things from us. They want to see people who have skills, stability, and experience. And frankly, a lot of the people I see don't have that. There's a lot of movement on their resume. There's a lot of large periods of unemployment or just unexplained times where nothing is happening. And so if they're paying us to find them talent, we have to give them what they want. The reason I bring that up is if any of you have worked with a recruiter and have had the experience where the recruiter doesn't get back to you, take a look at your resume. It might not be a work history that recruiter was able to work with. I'm prepared to talk about, you know, what I look for in resumes and cover letters, but you might want to talk about general things first.
I'll do both. This is Dave. Thank you all for hosting us. It is a pleasure to be here with everyone. And it's just such a beautiful setting we're in, so it's wonderful up here. My background as a recruiter started off in 1991, and that was a recession. It was at the tail end of the 90s recession. And I had been looking for work. I had just gotten out of college, looking for work, and I couldn't find anything. It was miserable. And I had no true work experience besides retail work that you get in high school. So eventually, kind of like George, I went to a recruiter, and the recruiters I went to all said, "Do you want to become a recruiter?" And so I ended up getting into recruiting. My background, education is accounting and finance, so I kind of naturally fed into the accounting and finance sort of recruitment position. And for 15 years plus, I've been, more than that, I've been doing finance and accounting recruiting, mostly in the Bay Area, but also up in Seattle for a while. So in doing that, I've seen a lot. I've seen economic cycles throughout that time period. I've seen a recession. I started in a recession, so I had more candidates than I could ever place, period. And again, like George was saying, our placement percentage is probably about 3%. So I would see 100 people, and I'd maybe help 3. And it ripped my heart out as being a new recruiter, because I wanted to help everyone. I wanted everyone to get a job. But the reality is, as a recruiter, it doesn't work that way. Clients, and of course the industry has changed completely since 1991 with Facebook and LinkedIn and all the other technologies that have come out of the internet. And it's really made being a recruiter challenging. And really what we get now are positions that are the hard to fill positions, and the clients want us typically to find candidates who are currently working and pull them out of competitive or their competition, finding the exact background with the stability, with the work history, with the technology skill set that they're looking for. So they're looking for exact matches. So it makes being a recruiter much more challenging, and you really have to have a network of candidates that are employed and start weeding through all of that from the direct hire perspective, and that's what I've been doing the last few years. On the contract side of recruiting, and that's an area that might be able to help a broader band of individuals, you can start off as a contractor or a temporary employee. And being a temporary employee is a great way to get into a company. It doesn't guarantee a permanent job or direct hire job, but it does get you exposure, and it does also give you experience that might help build the resume to get that full-time job. What I look in general, as a recruiter in general for a candidate, and what I look for on a resume, again, like George said, I look for stability, I look for education, I look for the technical skills, which I think as a recruiter we have to have for our clients to pay us the fee that they pay us. I also look for a personality when I'm sitting down with someone, and if I see a personality, outgoing, graceful, engaging, just a person who's on, I can sometimes sell that person into a position to a client who knows me well and trusts my reputation. I can sell a really strong, solid personality, someone who's eager to work and really wants to work. I can actually sell people like that for some positions in what I do. So I look for those kind of skill sets. I look for communication skills. I look for someone who looks me in the eye when they're speaking with me. I look for a well-groomed person. I look for someone who articulates their thoughts clearly. Unlike me, of course, right now. But I look for a lot of things. I look for the intangible things while I'm interviewing someone, and I think that's just as important as the tangible, the things spelled out on the resume. George, you were gonna.
Yeah. I mean, that's in terms of like interviewing a candidate that you find you have a rapport with, or somebody whose personality appeals to you. That makes sense, because you're looking for someone who you would like to work with, somebody you would like to see every day, and you want to translate that to your employer. If you have a good working relationship with your employer, the client, sometimes they can just take your word for it and see the candidate. In terms of just like the basics of the resume, I personally like chronological resumes that basically list where you've worked, when you've worked, and what I'd like to do is see it with the month and the day. If you say you worked at, Apple from 1996 to 1997, you know, that could be December to January, right? So I really want to see that it's January 1996 to like December 1997, because then that's 2 years. So that's one thing. And the stuff I'm saying now, I'm just sure you guys know, but I just want to cover it just to be thorough. In a resume, I would always go for the chronological versus the skills. Now, the skills resume is ideal for a person who maybe doesn't have a chronological work history. If you have a work history where there are large gaps, you might want to focus your resume to talk about your qualification of skills, and then every job that you've done, tailor what you've done in every job to how you perform those skills. And again, keep in mind, employers are looking for the what's in it for me factor. They're gonna wanna know, what did you do at Apple that was successful, that saved the company money or saved the company time? What was it that you contributed that added to their bottom line? Because they're gonna wanna see that you can do it for them. Regarding disabilities or the visual impairment factor, a very common question is always, do I discuss my disability or not during an interview? I think that if it affects your performance, your ability to do the essential functions of the job, I think you do. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that, but that's my take on it. I know that employers can't ask if you have a disability, but what they can do is ask if you can perform the duties of the job. You need to understand one thing. Employers, their primary concerns are going to be with safety issues. And also many of the questions that they probably want to ask, they don't because of legal constraints. And I think that's a great opportunity for you to address what you perceive are their concerns, and you educate them on what you can offer them. And in the areas where you might need some kind of assistance, you know, it could be a modified workstation or what have you, educate them. When Kate worked at the company where I worked, they had to do a special computer, right?
Right.
Yeah. And one thing that I did a little research on this thing. One thing I did find out is that the actual cost of updating a workstation is a lot less than a lot of people think. There's a lot of misconceptions about the cost of disability accommodations. And there is this, you probably know this organization called the Job Accommodation Network. Yeah, and there's a phone number that I can just give you guys if you ever want it. And basically, you know, you could tell your person that you're interviewing, you know, all I need is a screen that magnifies letters, like that's what you had, right?
At first, right.
And then the audio
right,
thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, just tell them that, you know, you call this number and you'll see that it isn't that exorbitant. I think what they said was the actual average cost of modifying a workstation is around $500.
Wow.
Yeah. Which isn't that much,
No.
really. And if you have a place, yeah, let me give you the number, ready? It's 1-800 526 7234.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, 1-800 526 7234. And it's called the Job Accommodation Network.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Back to you.
Yeah. You know, I think it's been said before, I think everyone that stood up here has had an opinion on a resume or how to do it or how not to do it. And we've all heard this before. If you ask 100 people how to put together a resume, I don't care how much experience they have, you're going to get 100 different answers. So I like that there's differences of opinion. I think it's good for you to hear differences of opinion. You know, some people say you should never have a functional resume. Some people say it's great. Some people say always have a chronological resume. There are no fast and hard rules around this because the people who are interviewing you are just as different as your resume. And, you know, they can fit together sometimes. So there are some things that I think is important to keep in mind when you're putting together that resume and that cover letter. I think the primary thing, and I know that both George and David will agree with me, is make sure that that resume and cover letter reflect the needs of the employer. Even if it's in a different format, even if you just have the years down there and not the month and the year. There are going to be some differences of opinion, but there's not one employer that will just hire you or bring you in for an interview if your resume doesn't fit their needs. And I think everyone agrees with that. And having said that there are many differences of opinion, I'd like to turn this over to your questions and answers. So ask them anything you want. People somehow think that recruiters are secretive and they're not cooperative. The total opposite is true. So ask them anything you want, okay? Kathy? Is Kathy here?
This is Alex. I'm going to walk around with a mic. Somebody have a question?
Here you go, okay.
This is Lisa. How come on Craigslist it says no recruiters for a lot of the jobs?
I think in terms of that, a company places a job order or a job posting on the internet. They don't want to use recruiters yet. They want to see what they can find on their own first, and it comes down to a money thing, really. It comes down to a cost. If they hire a recruiter to help them, it's going to cost them X percentage of the first year's salary, and so they're trying to save money initially. If it's a very hard position, the company will use a recruiter to cut to the chase because it'll be faster to use a recruiter than to go through 500 resumes and weed them all out. So it's more of a logistic and money thing.
Yeah, my name is Dan Kaiser, and I'm just curious as to what is the difference between a recruiter and a headhunter? I know that when I was on the board of directors of Guide Dogs for the Blind, we were recruiting a CEO, and you know, it seemed like the recruiter or the headhunters were, I guess it was a recruiter, was involved in almost to the end stage of the hiring, or at least the filtering out process. So how far along the process of the employment do you guys actually go?
Okay, first of all, the phrase headhunter has always been kind of a slang. I mean, we've been called headhunters, we've been called body snatchers. And, you know, that's what we do. What we do is we find people from other companies to work in like companies. I mean, if like, for instance, like Kate said, I work a lot, the majority of my clients are PR agencies, and PR agencies want people who have PR agency experience because they're gonna know how a PR agency functions versus a corporate office, and they're gonna know who the people in media and the analysts are that you need to know, the people you need to establish relationships with to get your clients' PR messages across. A recruiter, I think the difference isn't so much what's a recruiter and what's a headhunter. I think the difference is really this. It's a contingency recruiter versus a retained recruiter. Retained recruiters are usually the headhunters. Retained recruiters are people who get usually a third of the fee up front regardless of whether or not they find the candidate. So they can start the search and get a third up front, and if they identify the person, they'll get the remaining 2/3 of the fee. Usually, retained recruiters do very high-level searches like your CEO, that kind of a thing. A contingency recruiter only gets paid if we find the person that the company hires and the person, you know, survives the guarantee period. I am a contingency recruiter, and I can swear to you, contingency recruiters do a lot of work for nothing. Because, why? Because let's say a company says to me, we're looking for a senior account executive, and you know, they sign my contingency fee. What they're saying is, we will pay you only if you find the person that we like, that we hire, who survives your guarantee period. Now, I could do the search, I could present 3 or 4 people or 3 or 4 dozen people, and they could call me and say, oh, guess what, we hired, you know, my next door neighbor, she's great, I didn't know she was in PR. And, you know, it's thank you, and that's it.
Well, the other thing is, when you're a company, you can engage as many contingent recruiters as you want. So we could be competing with another contingency recruiter on the same job post, and we could be competing with their postings on Craigslist. I mean, so we have all this competition, and so like George is saying, it's like there's a lot of spinning your wheel as a recruiter, contingent recruiter.
And you know what? Keep that in mind the next time you work with a recruiter. Don't get angry at them if they don't call you back, because something like that could have happened. I could have been sending Mike out on interviews or something, but then he ends up getting a job on his own, or another recruiter places him, or my client says, oh, we hired somebody.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. How do you guys, as recruiters, handle, or maybe I should ask, what is your advice to somebody who does not, how do you guys handle people that don't have specific specialized degrees but want to work and yet aren't willing to go back to school? How do you know, but they have a lot of experience and their skill set is strong. What do you guys advise and recommend about that?
So is the question, just to clarify, is it more about the education piece of it? Is that what you're looking to get answered? Or
yeah, if you don't have degrees or you don't have a lot of, you know, you may have graduated from high school and gotten like a trade school degree, but now you want to do reception, or you want to work, in my case, with children in the private sector or whatever it may be, that you don't have a lot of education, but what you do have is experience.
I think it really comes down to, it does come down to experience and education, and it depends on who you're meeting with. Every company has a different policy. Some companies have a policy where they say whoever we hire for this X position has to have a 4-year degree and sometimes specifically to whatever the position's pertaining to. I would, as a recruiter, counsel the candidates. I don't know if that's kind of answering your question as well. Counsel the candidates to go back to school and get that degree if they can, and I would always counsel them that way when I met with my candidates. Give them as much advice as possible.
And I just want to add one thing to that. Your venue for getting a job is not going to be through a recruiter, because if the client says, you know, a degree is required, a degree is required. That's what they're paying for. You know what? I could have a job. I could have a job order at a company, and they're using me, but they're also running it online. And you know what? If you came to me and you didn't have the qualifications, I couldn't send you. But if you applied for that job on your own online, you could probably get an interview if you do everything else right. And why is that? It's because if you go through me, the company's going to have to pay for you. And if they're going to have to pay for you, they're going to want what they want. Well, sorry.
Hi, my name is Jerry. My question is a little personal. I've been dealing with these recruiters through a company called Set Focus, and they had me take a ton of tests to prove my skills, and in the end, they wanted me to take a class through them. Are they real recruiters, or are they just a scam?
Is there a charge? Are they charging you?
Yeah, $1,000 for their class.
Oh. That's a scam.
No, I would no. You know what? You know what? If you go to any recruiter who asks you for money, just leave. In California, it's an employer-paid marketplace. In the Midwest, like in Iowa, for instance, it is not uncommon for a recruiter to place you in a job, and the first 3 paychecks, I think there's a portion of your paycheck that goes to the company, but that's all very clear and upfront. In California, it's an employer-paid marketplace.
And anyone reeling you in like that,
Don't.
and then trying to sell you a class, that's ridiculous. I'd get up and walk out.
Yep. Can I start? Okay. I've got 3 questions, very simple ones. Why is it that it's said a candidate who is already working gets a job? A person who's got a job will get a job, while the unemployed, who is equally experienced, doesn't get a job?
Okay. Okay. Do you want to take the one? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is. A candidate who is working always stands a much better chance than a candidate who's unemployed, and the reason for that is when a company, and every single company has gone through layoffs, when companies go through layoffs, they tend to retain their top talent. So the conception is the person who is still surviving in the company obviously has something to offer the company because that person has not been asked to leave.
And also from a recruiter's perspective, remember the clients will engage us, they want the perfect resume. They want stability, they want the same industry, they want the technical skill set, and those people tend to be the ones that are still working.
Yeah, but then what happens to the equally experienced person, maybe 20 years of experience, 10 years of experience, but he's laid off just because there's a budget problem or something like that, and he's just still looking for a job, while the other person from another company jumps from that company into a different company and gets a job so easily. Why is it that recruiters don't, look into that situation?
I'm going to give you a simple answer for that. And remember this. That's why we now do networking. And I'm not saying anything against recruiters. Recruiters are probably, this is not the news you want to hear, but recruiters are probably not where you want to spend most of your time. That's the bottom line. I think you need to know that person that you're talking about, that's where networking comes in. You just heard 3% of the people they see are placed. 3%. Those other 97% of the people that are finding jobs, they're networking, they're writing to companies directly. So we're not trying to take business away from George or from David, but I think you need to hear that it's probably not your best way of finding a job. Would you not agree, David and George?
No, I would definitely agree with that. But I also, just to your question, I mean, an employer, when they hire candidates, whether it's through a recruiter or just in general, they're still looking for the right amount of experience. So maybe someone who has 20 years experience, it might be challenging to put into a senior, I'm going to use accounting because that's my background, senior accountant position, although the person could do it in their sleep. The employer's likely not going to hire that person because that person, the next moment when the economy turns around and gets better, that person is going to be leaving for a job that's more appropriate to their background, right?
Okay. Okay, second question. What is the lasting good impression a candidate can leave before leaving the interviewing process?
Well, they could apply for that $1,000 course and take that course.
What would it be seriously like? Just leaving the interviewer? He does something.
I like
says
chocolate.
Something. Pardon?
He likes chocolate.
You mean what's going to leave a good impression upon your exit from the interview?
Correct.
Okay, well, definitely the firm handshake, definitely that. And I would, seriously, I cannot minimize the importance of like a thank you card. I am a big advocate for people sending things in the mail, like a thank you handwritten card. And honestly, it's just thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our meeting. I look forward to hearing from you. Everybody's going to do it by email, and that's fine if you want to do it. But when I get that card, you know what I do when I get a card, a handwritten card from a candidate I interviewed? I walk around the office and I show people. I'll say, look what I got. Do you remember that girl who was here yesterday? Look at this. It makes a huge difference. And then, you know what's good about that? It brings your name up again to that recruiter, you know, so that I just don't forget you.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Right, that's what they can't write because they can't see.
Oh, well then
have
do
someone
the
write it for you, or have someone write it for you.
Okay, one more question.
Okay.
And now, I've worked before through temporary agencies, okay? Now, and I worked in accounts payable. Seeing that I was being paid half of the amount that the temporary agencies make. Like if I'm getting 15, they are getting 30. Now, why is it that they don't bounce up our amount so that we are more ready to work for it?
As a manager of multiple offices in recruiting, we're looking for a particular gross margin per placement, and that comes as a percentage, right? So it's usually around 30–31% of a gross margin. We as a company have such an infrastructure you have to pay for the infrastructure somehow. So usually the markups would be around 80–100% just to make the business run. And like you said, we see 100 people, we'll place 3. So you have to think about how much effort and time goes into that, checking references, trying to dig up clients, marketing, follow-up. All that costs a lot of money. And so we need a certain gross margin in order for the business to be profitable.
No, sorry, one more question.
Yep.
Do you not really check references?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, you're gone. I'm out of here. Okay.
George and David, I'm Tommy from San Francisco, and my questions for you, pretend that you are in that job interview for your job candidate, and you each have been asked the question, what is your greatest strength? And secondly, what is your greatest weakness? And answer that the way you'd like to see the person who you want to see get that job.
You mean I'm the candidate applying for a job and the employer is asking me what's my greatest strength, what's my greatest weakness?
That's correct.
Well, so you want to know what's my greatest strength probably is the fact that I'm a multitasker and I'm very organized. I can do many things to completion at once. And my greatest weakness?
He doesn't have any.
I don't have any, right? I admit it, I don't have
Never
any.
say that, by the way.
No, my greatest weakness? I would tell them, you know what, I would probably tell them, I would have to think about it. I'm not going to say anything stupid and cliche like, oh, I just tend to take on too much work all the time. You know how people always say that? I'm not going to say that. You know what, I never ask people's.
Listen, you guys.
Yeah, I never ask people that. I hate it when people say things like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know where I am in 1 year. What was that all about?
Well, evidently that's a common
nerve,
question we're going to be asked. So.
You know, what's your greatest weakness? I mean, forget the greatest strength. The greatest strength is, anyone can pull that out of a hat, I think. The greatest weakness, I always tell candidates to think of something that you want to improve on and have a game plan to improve on it. Yeah. So, one of my greatest weaknesses right now is I don't know SAP, or I don't know. I pick something out of the air. Pick a computer system out of the air. I don't know, databases very well, and I'm taking courses currently at the extension course to learn how to do better in Excel or to do better in Outlook or whatever the case might be, specific to the job, of course. I mean, specific to your industry and job. So if if you're interviewing to be a dog walker, well, my weakness is I have a bad back, but I'm going to the gym every day and I'm strengthening my muscles so I'm a better walker. I think of something like that and have a game plan.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to address this also because I'm probably a little bit different than George and or David, and maybe even Julie. I think prospective employers like us to be transparent. I think they can really tell when you're being honest or when you're being contrived. They have a second way of knowing that. So I think if you're answering that question, what is your greatest or what's your weakness, I think it should be real, but I don't think it should be the primary, you can't dwell on the weakness. Just like Silvana was saying earlier, here's a problem, but they're more interested in the solution. So I think if you're very honest about briefly, my friends tell me I have a habit of taking on too much work. Now I've learned to prioritize, and it's working. I think that's what they want to hear, personally. I think they want to know that you have a solution.
Yeah, to have the plan to overcome whatever that weakness might be.
But I think it needs to be real.
No, absolutely. No.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. I was the first one. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kim. I'm curious. I don't know if you guys can answer this question or not, but I just graduated with my associate's degree, and I want to go back to school to get a bachelor's. But I also want a job. I've been told for the longest time that you've been in school for too long, you need to get a job, you need to get a job. It took me longer to get my associates than I planned, but I've also heard with this economy that it's better to stay in school. What do you think?
That's a good question.
What's your degree in?
Yeah.
My degree is in it's liberal arts, social sciences, and I want to go get a bachelor's in social work.
And with the aim of becoming a social worker?
Yes.
Okay. So your question is, should you go back to school or get a job?
Should I, well, I have to go back to school to get some transferable classes, but as far as a bachelor's degree, the thing that's kind of pulling me in two directions at the moment is, of course, if a job comes along before I get my bachelor's, I'm going to take it, but should I stay in school for another 3 years or more to get a bachelor's, or should I start looking for a job? Because I have those that say, well, you should stay in school. And then others say, well, you need to find a job. You need to make some money.
Listen to your own heart, number
Right.
one. Don't listen to everyone around you, because everyone will have a different opinion. And if you can go to school and get a job, that's the best case scenario.
Mhm.
And the job may not be the exact job you want,
Right.
but it might lead to the exact job you want. And the education that you're going to continue to accumulate, which is your bachelor's degree, which I would encourage it for that field.
Mhm.
Definitely encourage it for that field. You might have to do both at the same
Right.
time, maybe even a part-time job.
Right, well, and that's why I'm volunteering. I'll be starting to do volunteering as well at a school for the blind, which will help me as well with
Absolutely.
interacting with people. So
Yeah.
that's a skill that I'm definitely going to want to enhance.
Does your school have a job placement service?
I don't know. I can. They have a career center.
Yeah,
so I can look
I
into
would
that.
definitely go there.
Yeah,
I would definitely
absolutely.
go there first thing.
Thank you
yeah.
so much. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a tricky question. Is it, there's been times that the recruiter said, they asked me how much I want to make, and I gave them a fairly low number. And they said they want to give me, they want to promote me as a higher number, higher salary so they could get paid better. Now my question here is, when you get a client, does the company already determine what salary they're going to pay, or do you have flexible of selling the client to whatever salary you want, so that you can get a higher contingent fee?
You know what? This is one horrible, horrible change that I've noticed in the 27 years I've been doing recruiting. In the past, when I took a job order, when I got an assignment from a company, they would tell me what the job title was, what the requirements were, what the salary range was, what they wanted in terms of education, and those were the parameters by which I would decide who I would forward on to the client. Just in this last year, for the first time ever, and I don't know if it's only in my field of tech PR because they're so plugged into social media, I've gotten job orders, I don't know if you've gotten this, I've gotten job orders where they'll say, we're looking for a senior account executive, we want them to have 6 to 8 years experience, and media relations in software. And I'll say, okay, that's great, I think I have people, what's the salary? And they have said, just in the last year, tell us what they're looking for. And what that tells me is that they're getting people to bid against one another.
They are.
I am praying that this dies in the bud.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, you're saying recruiters are asking you, what are you looking to make, and you're giving them a low number, but they're asking you to go higher?
Yeah, they want me to sell me for high. Like one time I said I wanted to have make 35. They said, well, you were working for that company, you got a degree in that, you could be making 45 or 50. And because I know that because of they use, that's how recruiter get paid, right? By the first year salary of the person they refer, right? So that's why, that's probably, I thought, okay, this is probably the reason, because you wanted to get paid more.
No,
so I'm just wondering if that's
not at all.
You know what, you are probably, I don't know what your field is, or you're in industry. Yeah, mine is PR, so I don't know too much about the salary ranges in that field, but maybe they were telling you that you were getting paid lower than you're worth in the past. You know what? A recruiter would never give you any advice that's going to disqualify you from getting a job. Trust me on that. No one is, hungrier after the dollar than a recruiter.
Yeah, the recruiter, yes, they make money on the placement, but we're not out there to not make a placement and not place you. So whether the company gives us guidelines, typically they give us guidelines for the amount they want to pay. A company's not going to bring someone in at the top of their pay scale, usually, into a position because they want to have latitude for raises throughout a couple years. So you usually kind of hit midpoint with your salaries. This is where most candidates get placed. But no, recruiters are not selfishly trying to bump your salary up so they get paid more.
I want to follow up to this question because I've been in a quandary when in a job, at the final stage of a job interview where you're down to I always come in second place, by the way, in job interviews, and that's just, obviously, that may be a big compliment to me. Doesn't mean squat to me because I'm not working. Anyway, but this has come up in that state, in the final stages. What do you think you're worth, and what do you want as a salary? And so is there a formula? I mean, I'd like a little more than what they advertise. I mean, everybody would, but then I'm in a quandary as to, maybe I'll be better off if I lowball because, I'll save the company money and I'll be a hero. But then again, am I screwing myself?
Yes, you are screwing yourself. What I would tell you to do is this. This is where a recruiter is invaluable. Why? Because recruiters see job seekers every day. Recruiters are on the phone with clients every single day. We know what the market is going to pay. If the recruiter says to you, you are worth X amount of dollars, I wouldn't, question that. I would take his word for it. If let's say that you want $75,000, that's what you really want. If you were to go into a company and on their application form they always say what's the salary you're seeking, I always ask people to put negotiable or negotiable or flexible, whatever.
Or range, huh?
Yeah, what I would do is probably ask for a little higher. Why? Because they're going to negotiate down, and maybe they're going to negotiate down to the salary that you really want.
I have a follow-up to that follow-up. This is a recommendation to everybody. Go to the website for Bureau of Labor Statistics and do a labor market analysis in the area that you want to work. You can get a national figure for salary, a state figure for salary, and local figures for salary. And then you kind of can mix it all together and come up with an average salary with your experience in the market that you're actually working in. Mm-hmm. And that's a good way to figure out because that's a horrible question. How much do you want to get paid? You're just like, I want a paycheck. I would like $150,000, but, And the other thing earlier, the gentleman mentioned Jan. You can go to their website, which is www.http://askjan.org. It's A as in Apple, S as in Sam, K as in Kite, J as in Jupiter, A as in Apple, P as in Peter.org. It's totally accessible with JAWS. It has a section for employees, which you're obviously interested in, but it also has a section for employers, and I suggest you research that as well. They have an alphabetical index by disability, which you can research. It's disability specific for accommodations, and it has a full section on ADA law. And it has documents available in Spanish. Can you repeat the website? www.http://askjan.org. Jan, you can also go to Google and just do quotations. Do you know how to do quotations? Do a quotation, do job accommodation network quote, and it will go right to the link. I'll give you the link. N as in Nancy.
Is it possible that, my name is Farhang. Is it possible that recruiters can ask our previous employers what our pay was?
With your permission, yes.
Oh, with our permission.
Yeah,
and
you know what? On your app, if you see a recruiter, they'll probably have you fill out an application, and on the very bottom where you sign your name, it's gonna say, I authorize the agency to check my references and blah, blah, blah. If you sign it. Yes.
We can't check references without your authorization.
Mm-hmm. George has to leave, but David can stay if you have a couple more questions for him.
I believe we have
He has
one
an
more
appointment.
question at least.
Mm-hmm.
Brian McCallan speaking. When I applied for jobs on a couple of human resource websites, under the salary section, it asked you to the only thing it would let you do is put a dollar amount. What's the best dollar amount to type into that field?
In addition to the website that was just mentioned, you can also go to salary.com and put in your region, your location, so you're talking apples to apples, so you're not comparing yourself to something in Washington, D.C. The salary ranges will be on a bell curve. The bell at the top is the median range for that job in your local area. And depending upon your experience, you can judge it from that median range. They have the lower, median, and upper range of that position on salary.com.
And those would be the ideal values to write in those fields?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
If you have to, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What did he say?
It's glassceiling.com.
Glass ceiling.
Oh, that, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Axel, and I have my question is this: if you come across a resume that shows, self-employed work record, and now this person is asking for a job to become an employee, isn't that kind of odd?
No.
No.
Okay. I mean, everyone shifts gears throughout their career, right? And so, I mean, I'm self-employed right now, personally, but I could go back and work for another recruiting firm if I wanted to. That's fine.
Any other questions?
Oh, there are a few, but I thought David had to scooch out.
Yeah.
This is Karen from Santa Rosa. What happens if you have had jobs, experience in the field that you're wanting to stay in, and the job does not exist anymore?
The
jobs don't exist. I've worked.
So you need to retool your skill set and maybe into a functional resume. Have a chronological resume, but also have a summary at the top that pulls all your skills together that are transferable to other jobs. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, no more questions? Oh, you go ahead. Actually, George has to go. Go ahead, Dean.
How important, David, I think David, social networking tool to today's job hunting?
Can you repeat that, please?
How important is social networking tool to today's job hunting? And the recruiter look at things like LinkedIn and all that.
Crucial. And I also look at Facebook, LinkedIn. I look at everything if it's a particular position.
And do you find candidates on LinkedIn? Yes.
Absolutely, on LinkedIn for sure. Even you can find people through your friends on Facebook. I mean, you know where your friends work. They usually have that on there. You can use that as a tool as well. But absolutely, that's a very crucial tool. And internal recruiters use that all the time too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you know, Mr. Recruiter and everybody else, is my resume is up on my Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
DANKYSOR. Okay? But the other thing is there a disadvantage to putting your resume on a Facebook page?
I don't think so. I don't see any reason why there would be. Unless your friends are tired of looking at it.
Hello, my name is Nicole. I have a question. I haven't worked for some time, so my references aren't, I guess, I know the people that I worked with are retired, and I didn't have too many, there wasn't too many people in the office. It was just me and the supervisor, and she's retired now. So that bothers me putting her name down, because it would be difficult for the company to find her. It's been difficult for me to find her. I don't even know, like, mostly everybody she worked with at the where I worked at the college are retired as well, so it's kind of hard to find.
What you need to do is track them down somehow, and you call them personally. Remind them who you are, unless they know, and then ask them if they would be a reference for you, and if you could give out their personal number or email to prospective employers.
Okay.
And that's perfectly normal. That's fine. You can also use personal references. Of course, not your mother or dad.
Right. Does it weigh the same?
Absolutely.
The personal and the job?
Personal is more of a character reference.
Okay.
So yeah, it does weigh. And if you haven't worked for a while, it'd be great to have a working reference. That's the best, of course. The person who's retired, they worked with you, so they know your work ethic. But it was a certain period ago, right?
Yeah.
And then I would have a personal character reference.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
One of our big concerns is disclosure about our disabilities, and then meeting the employer or the prospective employer. Earlier today, there was a scenario where one of the people here at the conference and someone, a speaker, were discussing this, and the job candidate, let's say, walked into the interview, and that's going to happen to all of us. We're going to walk into that interview, and if it's at a conference table, we're probably not going to be able to find that seat by ourselves. And I guess the thought was this morning by the gentleman who was talking to the prospective candidate was such that he thought that if an employer is overly helpful in the beginning, that job candidate may not have much of a chance. But my thinking is that, yes, they do. The interview is the most important. What's your thinking on that? I mean, because we're going to be kind of awkward walking into that interview. Can you think of a way to break the ice and make it easier?
One thing I would say is that most employers will tell you what kind of interview you're going to walk into. And at that point on the phone call, you're going to know, okay, that might be challenging. I'm going to need some assistance. Then you just talk to the employer on the phone at that point and describe your situation that you need some help getting to the seat. And that should alleviate the entire thing. I think it's just as, I mean, when you're sitting down and doing the interview, it's an interview, right?
That's right.
Good answer.
So you're saying just to be upfront from the very beginning?
Well, what I'm saying is that the employer for that exact experience should tell you that you're going to be sitting at a panel or sitting on a table with other people. They should inform you how the interview is going to go. Or you can proactively ask anyone who sets up an interview for you or with you to see you, ask them, what is your
interview process?
Interview process, yeah.
How are you?
And so you can ferret out if you're going to need assistance or not. And if you do need assistance, it's better at that moment to describe your situation, to have that on the table already. They've already said they want to see you, so you're not jeopardizing the fact that they're not going to see you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for questions.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and thank you for being so cordial to people who are really good at what they do, and thank you very much, David.